Hi, it's Jules here, and welcome to Jules FM. Today I'm talking with Sam Mitchell, football legend, premiership coach, and one of the most respected minds in the game. In this episode, Sam talks to us about the decision to play AFL professionally, what that looked like, as well as taking us back to the moment he realised he wasn't going to be drafted, a setback that forced him to rethink everything. He shares the mindset he built and the strategies he honed that helped him rebuild, refocus, and eventually rise to the top of the game. It's an honest look at what it really takes to make it. When you were growing up as a kid, did you always want to be a footballer, or was there something else you thought you might like to be?
I grew up, playing all of the sports. It wasn't like I had a super sporting family or any of that sort of thing. So I played all the sports that were available. We lived very close to my primary school, so I was the kid waiting in the yard for everyone else to turn up with a basketball or a cricket ball or footy or whatever. And so I played a lot of sport growing up, I guess, and I was best at footy. So in general, you like the things you're better at. So footy became passion pretty quickly.
Was there a moment in particular that you remember where you went, you know what? I love this so much. This is it. This is what I'm going to do for a living.
No, I think I was I think like most kids, I was quite naive to how difficult it was to play professional sport. So I just thought it was, when I was sort of 10 or 12, I just thought it was a given, I'll play AFL, that'll be my life. When I was about 14, I went to a first representative team, and this coach, he was so genuine and he really felt like he was saying something positive. He said, "You guys are so lucky." We're sitting in a room with, 70 or 80, 13 or 14-year-old boys. And, we kind of knew each other from different teams we'd played and stuff. And I was nowhere near the best in that group. But in my mind, I was obviously playing AFL. I never did the math. And then he said, "You guys are so lucky to be sitting in this room. One, maybe even two of you are going to play AFL footy." And it was the first moment that it dawned on me, it's not a given. So rather than remembering you are going to do it, it was probably remembering it might be harder than you think.
Yeah, right. And so after that decision, then when you went, okay, I'm committed, and it could be a little bit more difficult though, did you ever have periods of doubt where you went, I'm not good enough, this is not going to work out? And how did you manage that?
When I was going through my under 18 year, so the year 2000, I had won the best and fairest year before at Eastern Ranges, and then I would win it again that year. But about halfway through the season, the draft combine invites came out, and 6 or 8 of my teammates were invited to go and train in front of the AFL clubs, and I didn't get invited. And it was the first moment when I said, I'm not gonna make it. So I didn't get drafted at the end of that year. So end of my first year, I was no chance. I was not athletic enough and didn't have the right attributes that AFL clubs were looking for at the time. And that was a pretty tough period. I was finishing year 12, and dream was sort of stripped away. So at that point, I had an opportunity where I could have gone and played local footy and probably made a bit of money and done okay for myself. But your opportunity was away, or I could persist and go and play in the VFL. Till it only just come into the league with alignment with Hawthorn. I think it was the second year. So I went and played for Box Hill, and I played one full season there as a 19-year-old. And I was really fortunate. I had some great people that were around me, some great coaches, David Parkin and Donald McDonald, and these guys that were really huge, had huge impact on me. They committed to my learning journey, and at the end of that season, they pushed Hawthorn's hierarchy to draft me, which they did. So there was certainly some doubt through that period.
And so like, what kind of self-talk did you have to go through then? Because it would have been easy to go, okay, I'm just going to play local footy or whatever. Like, how did you have any sort of like mental kind of practices that helped you get through that?
Not deliberately, like I wouldn't have known about. I didn't know what self-talk was in 2000. It's the olden days for the kids of today. I was quite kind to myself, I guess. I was a persistent type, but I didn't understand what was required at the time. And I was a good learner. Like, I believed, people who wanted the best for me, I believed what they said, and I tried to implement things that they encouraged me to do. And I was kind to myself, and I was perhaps, people that didn't believe in me, I didn't trust them, and I didn't believe them. And so I believed myself, almost in a naive way. I just believed I was good enough, so it worked okay.
There are so many young people who are hopefuls and want to make it into AFL and AFLW. Why then do you think you made it overall, like compared to some of these?
I mean, a few attributes that everyone makes it for. Usually, almost every player at elite level sport has something they can do that they're better than everyone else at, or they're very, very good at. And I had a couple of physical attributes that limited me, but I also had a couple of physical attributes that I could do that no one else could. So I could kick on both feet. I was good in congestion and could, win the ball. So I had a couple of things, and I spent a couple of years around the age of 17, 18 trying to develop my weaknesses. And it's interesting, when you go to school and when you're in most of our lives, what happens is if you get a C in English and an A in maths, they tell you got to work on your English. But in elite sport, the opposite's true. An A is not good enough. You have to get an A+, and an A++. So I got some advice around your C, maybe try to get it to a B if you can, but really your A's got to be an A+, and that's going to make the difference. David Parkin gave me that advice. So when I think about why did I make it as a career, I had the right people giving me the right advice at the right time, and I was willing to do the work and learn. So I think when you have those couple of things on your side, that puts the odds in your favour, but there are no promises. I think the other thing I had was resilience, whether that was physical resilience or mental resilience. It's a really corny saying, but no matter how many times you get knocked down, you just got to get up one more.
Absolutely. No, not corny at all. Speaking of knockdowns, during your career, you had a couple of setbacks. Like, I know you had the hamstring injury that sidelined you for like 8 weeks. You also had copped a fair bit of criticism when you were starting out, like too slow, I believe, and too small. Those sort of things must have been also challenging. How did you overcome those challenges?
I have these circles. I might even have it nearby. These 2 circles about the things that matter and then the things you can control. So if you think about anything you're worried about or stressed about, if you have no control over that thing, then there's no point spending time thinking about it. By the same, if it doesn't matter, then you've got to not think about it either. And if you think about criticism, particularly external criticism, does that matter? Well, the answer is no, it doesn't. It doesn't impact you unless you let it. Now, internal criticism from your coaches, things you need to improve from people that want the best for you, you really have to commit to fixing those and improving those things. Like, they're absolutely vital. So one of the challenges there is around making sure that you are committed to fixing the things that need to be and improving yourself. But also being able to shut out the white noise of people who may or may not have your best interest at heart.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband always says, control the controllables, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about. Worry about what is in your control. Tell me, has failure ever taught you something that the wins didn't?
Of course, it's much easier. It's very difficult to learn from winning. When I was coaching, we had a close game a couple of years ago where we didn't handle the late part of the game very well, but we won, and we didn't review it particularly closely. And the next week we got into a very similar situation and we lost. And it was amazing the level of desire to learn. I always think of myself as a person that desires learning and wants to improve. But when we had won, even though we hadn't handled a close game very well, I was quite, we wanted to move on, wanted to make progress in our game. We looked at some other things, and the next game we lost because we hadn't committed to the learning that was required. And it was a really good lesson on just the outcome you may deserve, but sometimes you win when you don't really deserve to win. Sometimes you lose when you perhaps deserve to win. And being able to learn from wins is one of the things that the greats in any area, they learn from winning, and they don't shy away from the things that they didn't get right. It is quite easy to win and then say, oh yeah, I got it all right, when you never do, really.
So with that then, after a loss, what does that look like, that learning stage? Like, how do you break that down? Like, what's that process?
I sort of break our week up really clearly in my own mind. We have if you think about, if it's just a 7-day game to game week for us, then we spend the first day and a half really feeling however you want to feel. Great if you win and horrible if you lose, and just accept the emotion and don't have to fight it, just accept how it is. But around 48 hours later, you got to get back to the normal feeling and get back to, so if you come and see us 2 days after a game, you shouldn't know whether we won or lost the last game. The environment should be the same. And even emotionally, individually as a person, you need to be able to do that, to regulate your emotion and get back to that ideal position. So making sure that we do that. The first part of the week really is spent looking backwards. What can we learn from the game just gone? Middle part of the week is spent making progress collectively on whatever the direction you as an individual or the team needs to make. And then the final part of the week is in preparation for the next game. So really 3 quite clear phases. We sort of shut the review process at one point and do progress, and then we shut the progress and we do preparation. And then you perform on the weekend and all starts again.
And is that the process you used to follow as a player as well? That's how you used to break it down?
I didn't know that I was doing it, but when you retire and you review things that worked for you and things that didn't, and when you start coaching and you start learning about other people, and you figure out, okay, you're preparing for this game, but you're still thinking about the last game, so it makes it a bit messy. So trying to give clarity to players. I mean, if you can create clarity, that can create confidence, and then if you can create confidence, that creates the feeling that you can and deserve to do well. So really, a lot of what you're doing in preparation, if you can prepare the players in any way, you are trying to give them clarity, because that will create the confidence they need to perform.
Yeah, absolutely. As a player, was there, and you mentioned one before, but were there any other mentors who had a really big impact on your career? And then did they have any advice that stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about my life and the life of professional sport is you have so many great people around you who want the best for you. So as far as mentors, I had an enormous amount of mentors who did a whole lot of great things for me. And I think, whether that was players, so when I got drafted, I had, Shane Crawford, who was a great player at the time, who I learnt a lot of training standards and things from, or whether it was, in my studies, I had some mentors. I ended up completing an MBA just after I finished. And so those types of things you learn, and you meet all these different people from different walks of life. And I certainly have hundreds of pieces of advice and quotes that dictate the way you try to live your life.
Yeah, and your favourite? Can you think of any offhand?
A couple that I use on a fairly regular basis is that there's no shortcuts to anywhere worth going. Basic one is work works.
Yeah.
So, if you put in the work, then it'll pay you off, and it works over time. So those sort of things, they're the sort of commitment ideas and things that have dictated part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. So a broad question, but how did you get the best out of yourself as a player?
Just willingness to learn, willingness to do the work, and there's a level of sort of curiosity about improvement. So as I sit here now, there's a couple of our first years sitting out just to my my right. They're kicking the balls out there, they're discussing, football, and they're spending the time, and it just takes that. So I think willingness to learn. It's hard when you're young. I think you feel like you know a lot. I don't know if anyone, some of the people watching or listening will have teenagers in their lives, and those teenagers, they know everything.
Well, I'm hoping teenagers do this as well.
Yeah, the older you get, the more you realise you don't know. So, we're all on a big learning curve, and being willing to learn and risk how silly you feel when you're trying to learn and you can't quite figure it out. I think all those things matter.
I hope you enjoyed part 1 with Sam. Make sure you hit follow so you don't miss part 2, where we dive into his coaching mindset, how he develops players, and what unlocking peak performance really looks like from the other side. If Sam's story sparks something for you, or you think someone you know might gain something from this episode, make sure you share it with them. It might be exactly what they need to take the next step in their journey. Thanks for listening to Jules FM. Until next time.